Now for further discussion on the issue, we're joined in the studio by Mike Weitzman, techno-blogger and IT journalist and our defense correspondent, Jonathan Reggett, also with us here. Jonathan, thanks for the report. This was for the impetus to this discussion today, seeing these tanks. As someone who's been on the battlefield, it somehow makes my skin crawl to think of this thing being essentially a robot out there with so much power. Terminator 2, I have to bring up that movie from 1991, okay? This apocalyptic showdown between humans and artificial intelligence, Skynet. It took place in 2029, in that movie at least. Was James Cameron right? Are we on track for that?
But so he was 7 years wrong?
Or we may still be on track.
But yeah, this is where warfare is going, and of course there's advantages, but there's also disadvantages, and we have to be clear with that. The advantages, yes. How many times in 2006 did Israelis receive the message that Israeli soldiers were killed because their tanks were unable to maneuver in those very difficult mountain terrains of southern Lebanon? And the tanks there were basically just having a big traffic jam, basically sitting there as sitting ducks for the Hezbollah Cornet anti-tank missiles. It happened way too many times. Here, if this tank is hit and taken out of service, that's too bad, but it's only money. No lives are lost. The fact that it doesn't have to carry people, but only systems, is able to make it much smaller, easier to maneuver in these, again, very difficult terrains.
Yeah.
So a lot of sense in it, but, and it has to be said, is there anything better than the eyes of people on the ground?
The judgment calls.
I'm not sure. Yeah. I'm not sure. Again, you can be sitting in a room and moving around and saving your soldiers' lives, and that's extremely important. But is there something better than the eyes of the commander being on the site? Yeah. Not so sure. A big debate there.
Yeah, it's also the question of, friendly fire is one thing, but can these technologies be hacked, be utilized? Mike, bring you into this conversation here. Philosophically, is it inevitable?
It's not just philosophical question, even more than ethical question. Israeli concept of tanks always was human life saving. Even the Merkava tank, the first tank of Israel, it was always just to save the crew before you saving the technology. So we're talking now not changing the concept, but saving lives, and we're saying the new generation of technology will be on first line. Unhuman technology in front.
Like, why wouldn't we do this? I mean, we're talking jets. I mean, fighter jets themselves are largely held back in terms of performance, even by their human occupiers, the pilots. But you mentioned the safety aspect here.
Human body can't stand such pressure, such time of decision making.
And if you have the opportunity, like you're saying, to take people out of a tank, out of that harm's way, is this just an inevitable path forward then on this technological journey?
We're seeing a new generation of geeks planning and driving tanks with the simulators. It's much easier to do now from something somewhere in the distance. The slogan of Tank and Armored Corps in Israel say the man in the tank will prevail.
Right.
But it's always the brain in the tank and not just the technology.
Jonathan, jump to the Hebrew here. Is the military driving this? I mean, is a lot of this intelligence, the artificial intelligence, the technology, is it being driven by the military right now? Is that seemingly where these applications are coming out of the most?
Yes, and we're seeing constantly all the time the Israeli military on the one hand pushing forward, being ready for war, but on the other hand trying to save its soldiers' lives as much as possible. And now comes the question, what is more important? Pushing forward, making sure we win the war, regardless of the human toll that will be there, or maybe not being as strong as we can, but saving many lives. And it's a big question.
We have just about a minute left here. It comes down to safety. I mean, you take this grand illusion that we have control with our hands on the wheel. Is it in fact safer to just take people out of the equation?
There are precautions that been to be made, and safety and security in the cyber-wise issues, not to your tank not to be hacked and used against you. We're talking now about supportive vehicles and supportive tanks, and not changing tanks and people. This new tank by IDF will be a supportive for regular Merkava tanks. We're not changing as wise as F-35s now.
We'll see.
Taking for
could be the next thing. Unfortunately,
generation.
fascinating topic as is. Mike Weitzman, Jonathan Rego, out of time for it though. We'll be back after a short break here with more on Zoom In.